You step outside into the cold in January, breathe in sharply, and feel that familiar tightness in your throat. By next week, your nose is blocked, your head feels heavy. You tell yourself it's another winter cold. 700 years ago, a medieval peasant wakes before dawn in an unheated house. The air is cold enough to see his breath. Smoke from the hearth hangs lightly in the room. He eats, works, and moves through the day without sealing himself inside a warm box. Winter is harsh, uncomfortable, and physically demanding. Modern people live with heating, medicine, vitamins, and constant hygiene, yet spend winter bouncing from one cold to the next. Medieval peasants lived without any of that, and the pattern of 3 colds every winter simply didn't exist in the same way. People got sick in the past, they caught infections, they died from illnesses modern medicine now treats easily, but the cycle of constant minor sickness, the repeated colds, sore throats, and lingering congestion that define modern winter was shaped by something much newer. The difference isn't biology, it's the environment winter creates today. Modern winter is spent indoors, windows closed, air reused, rooms kept at the same temperature day and night. Schools, offices, buses, and shops funnel people through the same enclosed spaces, breathing the same air for hours at a time. Every winter day follows the same pattern. Large groups gather in sealed spaces. Air circulates instead of escaping. The same few pathogens are shared, reshared, and reintroduced repeatedly. By the time your immune system finishes dealing with one exposure, the next one arrives. This is why modern winter sickness feels endless. It's not one illness. It's a series of small hits stacked too close together. Medieval winter didn't work like this. Homes were drafty. Air moved constantly, whether people wanted it to or not. Smoke, cold, and outdoor air flowed through living spaces. People spent less time packed together in large enclosed groups for long continuous hours. Winter was brutal, but it was not sealed. Illness doesn't just depend on what you're exposed to. It depends on how often and how intensely that exposure repeats. Modern winter compresses exposure into tight loops. Medieval winter spread it out. Most modern cold advice focuses on strengthening the individual boost immunity. Take supplements, power through. Almost none of it questions the system that makes repeated exposure normal in the first place. Medieval peasants didn't boost their immune systems. They didn't optimize health. They simply lived in a winter environment that didn't trap and recycle illness the way ours does. Winter didn't push medieval peasants indoors and lock them there. It pushed them through the cold. A winter day began in air that bit the lungs. Houses were not warm boxes you escaped into. They were shelters from wind and rain, nothing more. Smoke leaked through gaps. Cold air slipped in through cracks. Even indoors, the outside was never fully shut out. Medieval homes breathed, not by design, but by limitation. Walls were thick, windows were small, and there was no glass seal to trap air. The fire warmed the body closest to it, not the entire room. Heat rose and vanished. Fresh air replaced it, whether anyone wanted it or not. Air didn't sit still. Modern winter life traps people in rooms where the same air circulates for hours. Medieval winter life did the opposite. Air constantly turned over. Smoke forced it to. Drafts guaranteed it. Even sickness had a harder time lingering in one place. Peasants didn't spend 8 or 10 straight hours packed into large indoor groups. Work pulled them outside repeatedly, even in winter, tending animals, fetching water, moving between buildings. Cold was uncomfortable, but it broke up long stretches of shared air. There were gatherings, meals, church, communal work. But these weren't day-long indoor marathons. They were short, punctuated moments, surrounded by exposure to open air. The rhythm of the day kept people moving in and out of enclosed spaces instead of sealing them inside. Nights were long, but bedrooms weren't isolated bubbles. Fires died down, temperatures dropped, people slept in layers. Waking during the night wasn't spent scrolling or staring at light. It happened in darkness and quiet, with no stimulation pulling the body toward full alertness. Sleep supports recovery best when it isn't interrupted by stress signals. Medieval nights didn't provide many. Medieval peasants did get sick. They caught infections. They suffered from illnesses that modern medicine now handles easily. Childhood mortality was high. Severe disease could be devastating. What was different is the pattern. The modern experience of winter sickness is not one major illness. It's repetition. A cold that fades, then returns. A sore throat that turns into congestion, then resets. Each exposure arrives before the body fully recovers from the last one. That cycle depends on density and repetition. Medieval winter life didn't feed that machine as efficiently. Fewer people shared the same air for long, uninterrupted stretches. Exposure events were spaced out. When illness moved through a household or village, it tended to run its course instead of endlessly re-entering the same bodies. The cold itself wasn't the enemy. In many ways, it worked against spread. Cold air held less moisture. Fires dried indoor spaces. Pathogens didn't linger in humid, sealed environments, because those environments barely existed. Modern winter is different. We build warm, sealed interiors. We keep humidity high. We group people tightly for long periods. Then we move them directly from one enclosed space to another. Home to car, car to office, office to store, store back to home. The same air, the same faces, the same exposures on a loop. That loop didn't exist before. The medieval winter was harsh, but it was not optimized for comfort. That lack of optimization created an accidental buffer. The environment itself interrupted transmission instead of amplifying it. If medieval winter life naturally broke up exposure and modern winter life concentrates it, then the real driver of constant colds isn't the virus itself. It's the geometry of how we live indoors now. You don't catch winter colds because the air is cold. You catch them because the air doesn't move. In medieval winter spaces, air escaped constantly. Smoke demanded it. Drafts forced it. Heat rose and vanished. Fresh air replaced stale air repeatedly, not by design but by physics. Rooms never reached equilibrium. Breath didn't hover for hours. It dispersed. Modern winter buildings are engineered for the opposite goal. We seal them. Windows are tight. Walls are insulated. Heat is conserved. Air is recycled. The same molecules circulate through rooms, halls, buses, and offices over and over. The key factor isn't how many people enter a space, it's how long their air stays. In medieval homes, people shared air briefly, then lost it to the outside. In modern indoor spaces, people share air continuously. Classrooms, open-plan offices, trains, waiting rooms, each one is a container where breath accumulates. Heated winter air indoors tends to sit in a narrow comfort range, not dry enough to clear quickly, not fresh enough to reset. Moisture hangs in the room, carried by breath. Particles stay suspended longer. The air becomes a memory of everyone who's been there. When you share air with the same group for hours, day after day, small exposures stack. One encounter doesn't matter much. Repeated encounters do. Medieval winter life broke those chains naturally. Modern winter life reinforces them relentlessly. Medieval communities were small and stable. You encountered the same limited group repeatedly, but not for extended, enclosed periods. Modern winter life mixes large numbers of people into shared spaces, then reshuffles them daily. One classroom feeds into another household. One office feeds into public transit. The network expands fast. This is why modern winter sickness feels less like a wave and more like a hum that never stops. The air never resets long enough for the chain to break. By the time one exposure fades, another arrives. Medieval buildings weren't healthy by intention. They were uncomfortable, cold, smoky, leaky, but those flaws created constant air turnover. The physics worked against accumulation. Modern buildings are comfortable by intention, and that comfort comes with a hidden side effect: air that remembers. Winter colds aren't just seasonal, they're architectural. They're the result of how long we share air, how often we reuse it, and how rarely we let it fully escape. Sealed air and dense crowds didn't become normal overnight. They arrived at a specific moment in history, for a specific reason. The real shift happened when winter stopped being something society slowed down for, and became something it powered straight through. Industrial work changed the rules first. Factories ran on clocks, not daylight. Shifts started on time whether it was dark, cold, or snowing. Missing work wasn't an option. Being present mattered more than being well. That logic spread everywhere. Schools adopted fixed schedules, offices followed suit, cities grew denser, public transport became the bloodstream of winter life, moving thousands of people through sealed spaces twice a day, morning and evening, day after day, the same air, the same faces, the same exposure loops. Heating systems turned winter indoors into controlled environments, warm, predictable, stable, but stability has a cost. When temperature stays constant, people stay inside longer. When indoors feels pleasant, movement drops. Fresh air stops being part of daily life and becomes something you get on weekends, if at all. Short daylight hours compress activity into fewer windows. People arrive and leave at the same times. Buildings fill and empty together. Exposure synchronizes. What used to be scattered across the day now stacks on top of itself. Then comes the unspoken rule of modern winter: show up anyway. A mild sore throat doesn't cancel a meeting. Congestion doesn't stop a commute. Fatigue is ignored. The expectation is quiet endurance. Stay productive. Don't fall behind. Illness becomes something you work through, not something you step away from. When people move through winter while run down, sleep deprived and stressed, recovery slows. Not dramatically, just enough. The body clears one exposure while the next one arrives. Stress doesn't cause illness, but it narrows the margin. Sleep debt doesn't make you sick, but it stretches recovery time. Indoor time doesn't infect you, but it multiplies contact. None of these factors are catastrophic on their own. Together, they turn winter into a conveyor belt. Modern life optimized for consistency. Same schedule, same temperature, same output, regardless of season. Medieval life did the opposite. Winter changed the rhythm. Work slowed. Movement shifted. Exposure patterns broke naturally. We traded that flexibility for reliability, reliable heating, reliable schedules, reliable productivity. And with that trade came reliable winter sickness. Not dramatic outbreaks, just a steady background level of colds that never quite clears. This is why modern winter illness feels inevitable. Not because it is, but because the system keeps recreating the same conditions that allow it to persist. If winter sickness is being amplified by how modern life is structured, and not by personal weakness, then what parts of the old system actually protected people, and which of those protections still work today? Once you understand how medieval winter life worked, the lesson becomes surprisingly modern. They didn't avoid illness by chasing health. They avoided the cycle by letting air move, letting days break apart, and letting the body recover without constant interruption. The protection came from structure, not strength. Modern winter sickness isn't driven by one big exposure. It's driven by repetition. Too many shared hours in sealed spaces, stacked back to back with no reset in between. When those windows of exposure shrink or break apart, the cycle weakens on its own. This doesn't require living in a drafty house or abandoning heat. It requires recognizing what actually multiplies risk. Stale air is one. Long, uninterrupted indoor stretches are another. Sleep squeezed thin by winter schedules is a third. None of these feel dramatic. Together, they decide how winter unfolds. Medieval life forced resets. Air escaped, people moved. Night stayed dark and low pressure. Recovery had room to finish before the next exposure arrived. Modern life removed those resets in the name of comfort and efficiency. Rebuilding resilience means reintroducing pauses the system erased, not by adding more effort, but by reducing friction, letting air change instead of recirculate, breaking up long indoor blocks instead of stacking them, treating winter sleep as something to protect, not something to squeeze around obligations, allowing illness to fully pass instead of working straight through it and carrying it forward. None of this is about perfection, it's about margins. When recovery gets a little more space, the body does the rest. When exposure windows widen, repetition loses power. When winter stops being a test of endurance, it stops behaving like one. Medieval peasants weren't healthier because they tried harder. They were healthier in winter because the system around them wasn't constantly undoing recovery. Once you see that, the modern story changes. Winter colds aren't proof that you're weak. They're proof that modern life keeps asking the body, to perform without resetting the conditions it needs. Winter sickness isn't the only place this pattern shows up. Over and over again, we see the same trade: comfort for speed, efficiency for volume, consistency for resilience. The body adapts until it doesn't. If optimizing winter life quietly made us sicker, what else did we optimize the same way? What other systems worked better when they were slower, messier, and less controlled?